These are the people who always believe life happens to them, never through them. They drain your joy by constantly complaining, refusing to take responsibility, and expecting you to rescue them. Over time, their victim mentality becomes a heavy burden you carry. Proverbs 13:20 warns us, "He that walketh with wise men shall be wise, but a companion of fools shall be destroyed." You know, it's easy to think that someone who always feels like the victim deserves all of our compassion, and in many ways they do, but there comes a point when that constant tide of blame and self-pity doesn't just weigh them down, it begins to drown you, too. You'll recognize the chronic victim by the way they spin every story, so that someone else is always responsible for their pain. Nothing is ever their fault. Life is a series of unfair events. They'll sit across from you with their eyes fixed on the past, listing every betrayal, every disappointment, every moment when the world did them wrong. At first, your heart goes out to them because you care. You want to help. You offer your energy, your time, your listening ear. And for a little while, you believe maybe that's all they need. Someone to stand with them in the darkness. But the darkness isn't something they want to leave behind. It's where they feel safest. Because to step into the light would mean taking responsibility for their own choices, for their part in the story. That's a hard thing to do, so they cling to their suffering like it's the only identity they've ever known. The more you try to lift them up, the heavier they become. You start to notice how every conversation circles back to how hard their life is, how ungrateful other people are, how misunderstood they feel. And no matter how much you pour into them, their cup stays empty. They are never satisfied because healing isn't their goal, validation is. They need you to agree that the world is always against them, that nothing is ever going to change, that everyone else is to blame. The danger in staying close to the chronic victim is that their mindset is contagious. You start absorbing their bitterness. You find yourself questioning your own optimism, your own resilience. You begin to wonder if maybe they're right. Maybe life really is just a long string of injustices waiting to happen. And slowly, almost without noticing, you become another voice echoing their hopelessness. That's how your happiness gets eroded, piece by piece, until you can't remember what it felt like to be lighthearted and free. Scripture teaches that we are called to carry each other's burdens, but not to assume the weight of someone else's entire existence. When you confuse compassion with enabling, you sacrifice your own peace. You have to decide when it's time to step back and let them face themselves. Because some people will never heal as long as they have an audience for their suffering. You can love them from a distance. You can pray for their growth, but you don't have to sink just because they refuse to swim. There's a kind of person who will smile with you, nod when you share your dreams, and clap when you win, but something in their eyes gives them away. They are the silent competitor, the one who can't help but measure their worth against yours. It isn't always obvious at first. They might be someone close to you, a colleague, a relative, even a friend you've known for years. You'll notice it in the small things, the way they rush to tell you about their accomplishments right after you share yours, or how their compliments land a little flat, almost rehearsed. Underneath it all, they're keeping score. They believe that if you rise, they must be falling. If you succeed, it somehow diminishes them. This mindset is a prison they've built for themselves, but if you're not careful, it will start to confine you too. Because when someone constantly compares themselves to you, you end up tiptoeing around your own blessings. You hesitate to share good news. You downplay your progress to protect their feelings. Over time, you shrink just to keep their insecurities from boiling over. That's how the silent competitor quietly erodes your joy, by making you feel guilty for growing, but you are not responsible for someone else's sense of inadequacy. You are not here to dim your light so another person can feel more comfortable in the shadows. When you start believing that your achievements must be softened or hidden to keep the peace, you betray the part of you that was born to shine. It's a subtle kind of manipulation because it disguises itself as friendship. You might hear things like, "You're so lucky," or "must be nice," or "I could have done that if I'd had your advantages." Those words are tiny barbs, designed to puncture your enthusiasm just enough that you stop reaching for more. The truth is, the silent competitor is at war with themselves, not with you. Your success is merely a mirror reflecting their own unmet potential. And until they choose to confront their self-doubt, nothing you do will ever be enough to reassure them. You could give up every dream you have and still, they would find someone else to envy. That's why it's so important not to internalize their struggle as your burden. You can be compassionate without sacrificing your growth. You can be kind without apologizing for your victories. You can even cheer for them as they find their own path, but you don't have to slow down or hold back to make them feel safe. Remember, the only person you were ever meant to compete with is the person you were yesterday. When you refuse to play the game of comparison, you set yourself free, and you might just inspire them to do the same. There's a certain kind of person who doesn't just want your attention or your affection. They want control. The master manipulator is skilled in ways that can be hard to see at first, because they don't come at you with overt demands or obvious aggression. Instead, they slip into your life through the cracks of your kindness and your desire to keep the peace. They study you carefully, learning what makes you feel guilty, what makes you feel responsible, what makes you question yourself. And then they use that knowledge like a key to unlock your defenses. At first, it feels like you've found someone who truly understands you. They're attentive, maybe even charming. When you share your struggles, they are quick to offer solutions. When you feel uncertain, they're always ready with advice. But over time, you notice something unsettling. The things they once encouraged you to do are now reasons for criticism. The decisions you made with confidence start to look flawed in their eyes. You find yourself defending your actions over and over, apologizing for things you don't remember doing wrong. That's how they tighten their grip, by distorting your sense of reality. Manipulators are masters of selective memory. They will insist you said something you never said or deny promises they once made. They create confusion so you're more likely to depend on them for clarity. It's like standing in a hall of mirrors, where every reflection is warped just enough that you can't trust what you see. And when you try to pull away, they turn to guilt. They remind you of all they've done for you, all the sacrifices they claim they made on your behalf. Suddenly, you feel ungrateful for wanting to reclaim your own life. This is how your happiness is slowly dismantled. You lose trust in your own judgment. You become afraid to speak up because you already know they'll find a way to twist your words. Your confidence starts to erode, and you begin to believe maybe you really are the problem. That's exactly where they want you doubting yourself, questioning your worth, and looking to them for validation. You have to understand, manipulators don't just crave power over situations. They crave power over people. And if you give them enough space, They will script your entire story, casting themselves as the hero and you as the fragile soul who needs rescuing. But the truth is, you don't need saving. You need to remember who you were before their influence made you small. You need to trust that your instincts are not broken, that your voice still carries truth, even if someone else refuses to hear it. No relationship that requires you to abandon your integrity is worth preserving. You can step away without shame. You can walk out of the maze they built around you and stand in the open air again. Because the moment you stop defending yourself to someone committed to misunderstanding you, you start protecting the most sacred thing you have, your peace. Some people wear their suffering like a badge, and they expect you to salute it every time you walk by. The emotional black hole is the person whose life is a constant crisis, one disaster after another, with no space for anything but their pain. It doesn't matter how many times you show up for them, how much advice you give, or how many pieces you help pick up. The moment you think you've finally helped them stand, they collapse again, needing more of you, consuming more of your time, your energy, your spirit. At first, it feels noble to be their anchor. You tell yourself you're just being a good friend, a supportive partner, a caring relative. You believe if you can just love them hard enough, long enough, they'll eventually find solid ground. But you soon realize the ground never comes, because for the emotional black hole, there's no intention of healing, only a need to be constantly filled. And what they need is bottomless. You'll recognize them by how every conversation starts and ends with their problems. When you try to share anything about your own life, they quickly steer it back to themselves. If you dare to set a boundary, you become the villain in their story, accused of not caring or abandoning them when they need you most. They thrive on your guilt, they count on it, because as long as you feel responsible for their well-being, they never have to take responsibility for themselves. Over time, you'll notice that your own spirit feels a little heavier each time you're around them. Your optimism starts to fade. Your energy becomes scarce. You catch yourself dreading their calls because you already know what's coming, another monologue about everything going wrong and how it's up to you to make it better. And if you can't, you're made to feel like you failed them. That's how they keep you tethered to their chaos. But no matter how much you care, you are not obligated to be someone's endless source of emotional fuel. You are allowed to draw a line between compassion and self-preservation. The truth is, some people aren't interested in solutions. They're addicted to the attention their suffering brings. If you never step back, you become just another object they consume to ease their own emptiness. Scripture reminds us each of us must carry our own load. Helping someone doesn't mean surrendering your own peace or sacrificing your purpose. It means standing beside them when you can and stepping back when you must. You can still love them without letting them drain the very life out of you. You can still hope they find healing without sacrificing your own. Because if you keep pouring into a void, eventually you will have nothing left to give to anyone, including yourself. Some people disguise their negativity behind the mask of helpfulness. The chronic critic is that person who always claims they're only trying to tell you the truth. But somehow their truth never sounds like love. It sounds like judgment. It sounds like 1,000 little reminders that you're not quite enough, no matter how hard you try. They find flaws in your plans, holes in your dreams, something lacking in every effort you make. And they deliver these opinions as though they're doing you a favor, as though their harsh words are the medicine you should be grateful to swallow. You'll hear them say things like, "I'm just being honest," or "I don't want you to embarrass yourself," or "I only say this because I care." But pay attention to how you feel after spending time with them. If you walk away smaller, heavier, and questioning your worth, that's not caring, that's control. Because the chronic critic doesn't want you to soar. They want you to stay right where you are, tethered to their approval, seeking their validation every time you dare to grow. What makes this so damaging is how subtle it can be. You start believing they see something you don't, that maybe their perspective is more realistic than your hope. Over time, their voice becomes the one you hear in your own head when you try something new. You catch yourself anticipating their disapproval before you've even begun. And that's how you begin to limit yourself. You don't need to be told no anymore because you've already internalized their skepticism. The chronic critic often operates from their own fear of change, fear of failure, fear that your progress will highlight their stagnation. But their fear is not your responsibility. Just because they can't see the beauty in your vision doesn't mean it isn't there. Just because they don't believe in possibility doesn't mean you have to stop believing in it too. There is a difference between constructive feedback and chronic criticism. Feedback builds. It comes with respect and a genuine desire to help you improve. Criticism tears down. It is rooted in insecurity and expressed through contempt. And if you don't recognize the difference, you'll spend your life trying to appease someone who can't be satisfied. You are allowed to guard your spirit from those who confuse cruelty with honesty. You can set boundaries around what voices you allow into your dreams. You can choose to surround yourself with people who challenge you without diminishing you, who see your flaws without dismissing your gifts. Because when you stop giving the chronic critic the power to define you, you start reclaiming the joy and confidence that were yours all along. There's something especially painful about discovering that the person you trusted was never really who they claimed to be. The pretender is the one who mirrors your hopes, your values, your passions, all so convincingly that you start to believe you've found someone who truly understands you. They'll nod when you speak about your purpose. They'll echo your convictions. They'll weave themselves into your life with a quiet skill that makes their presence feel natural, even necessary. But underneath that polished surface lies an emptiness, a lack of genuine care, a hollow core where authenticity should be. At first, you don't see it, because you want to believe that the connection is real. You want to think you've finally met someone whose heart beats in rhythm with your own. But the pretender isn't drawn to who you are. They're drawn to what you can give. They're drawn to the warmth of your sincerity, the security of your support, the benefits of being close to someone who actually lives by their principles. And so they study you, learning which words will earn your trust, which gestures will open your heart, which stories will make you feel bonded. You'll notice the truth eventually, often in the moments when you need them most, because that's when the mask slips. When life tests your connection, when you struggle, when you fail, when you stand in need rather than supply, that's when their interest begins to fade. They start to distance themselves. Their responses grow colder, more distracted. They have no investment in your healing or your progress. The moment you can no longer serve the image they crafted, they quietly slip away, and you're left questioning everything. You replay every conversation, every late-night talk, every promise they made. You wonder how you could have missed the signs, how you could have mistaken their performance for sincerity. But you must understand, this wasn't your fault. It's easy to believe in the goodness you see in others when your own heart is genuine. You didn't fail by trusting, you simply encountered someone unwilling to offer the same in return. The danger of the pretender is not just that they waste your time, but that they can make you wary of trusting again. They plant seeds of doubt that whisper maybe no one is really who they appear to be. Maybe every connection is just another performance waiting to unravel. But don't let their deception steal your openness. Discernment doesn't mean closing your heart. It means watching for the alignment between words and actions. Real relationships reveal themselves over time. True character is proven not when things are easy, but when they get hard. When you learn to watch how people show up when there's nothing to gain, you'll see more clearly who belongs in your life. And in the end, you'll understand that your happiness is far too precious to be shared with someone committed only to pretending.